Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And unfortunately, our feature tonight is another one of the great green and gold, the great Green Bay Packers of the 1960s, number 24, Willie Wood, who died recently at the age of 83. Willie was a safety for the Packers. He won all NFL honors 9 times in a 9-year stretch from 1962 to 1971. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1989. And he made one of the key plays in Super Bowl history in the first Super Bowl in 1967. And beside all that, he was a really nice guy as well. Willie came out of the D.C. area, Armstrong High School, and he went across the country to play in Southern Cal College. And in fact, he was the first black quarterback in the Pacific Coast Conference. He was the Trojans quarterback from 1957 to 1959, where he had a relatively undistinguished career. Whether it was that career or racism, because there were virtually no black quarterbacks in the NFL, he was not drafted in the 1960 draft. But one man saw that he was an incredibly talented athlete, and that was Vince Lombardi. Willie had written a letter to him asking for a tryout, and Vince Lombardi, although he had a quarterback in Bart Starr, wanted another safety, and he saw that Willie Wood could fulfill that role. Vince Lombardi caught a lot of grief for drafting black players like Willie Wood in those days. The Washington Redskins weren't even integrated at that point, but he said the only colors on the Green Bay Packers are green and gold. We draft for talent and nothing else. Willie was an incredibly hard hitter, and he was a ball hawk as well. He led the NFL in interceptions in 1962, but his seminal moment was in the first Super Bowl in 1967, Super Bowl I. The Packers were up 14-10 in the third quarter. The game was actually quite close against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs had the ball and were looking for the go-ahead touchdown. Willie Wood intercepted a Len Dawson flat pass and returned it 50 yards to the 5-yard line. Then Elijah Pitts put it over, and the Packers were never threatened in the game again. That play is one of the most important plays in Super Bowl history. Here is what ESPN said about Willie Wood. Willie Wood, a Hall of Fame safety whose key interception in Super Bowl I helped carry the Green Bay Packers to a 35-10 rout of the Kansas City Chiefs, died Monday afternoon in Washington, D.C. He was 83. The Green Bay Packers family lost a legend today with the passing of Willie Wood. Packers president and CEO Mark Murphy said in a statement, Willie's success story, rising from an undrafted rookie free agent to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is an inspiration to generations of football fans. While his health challenges kept him from returning to Lambeau Field in recent years, his alumni weekend visits were cherished by both Willie and our fans. We extend our deepest condolences to Willie's family and friends. In what was initially billed as the first AFL-NFL World Championship game found in the 1966 season, the heavily favored Packers held a tenuous 14-10 lead over the Chiefs at halftime. On Kansas City's first possession of the third quarter, while driving near midfield, quarterback Len Dawson felt pressure and tossed a wobbly pass that Wood picked off and returned to the Chiefs' 5-yard line. Thanks to what legendary Packers coach Vince Lombardi called the steal of the game, Green Bay scored on the next play for a 21-10 lead and never looked back. We played well in the first half and at the start of the second half, but that interception by Wood changed the complexion of the game, Chiefs coach Hank Stram said at the time. Wood had an injury-plagued college career at USC, where he became the first black quarterback in the Pacific Coast Conference. He was bypassed in the 1960 NFL Draft, but undeterred, he sent a letter to teams seeking a tryout in the NFL. Lombardi then made two wise decisions in a career full of them, answering Wood's letter and moving him to free safety. The Packers saw his heart while the others saw his size. Jim Hill, who played for the Packers from 1972 to 1974 and is now sports director for KCBS-TV in Los Angeles, told the Associated Press, Vince had an eye like Joe Torre or Tom Lasorda. He could see talent where other people couldn't. It was at that new safety position on the opposite side of the ball that Wood excelled. Known as a fierce hitter with a nose for the ball, Wood carved out a career that included being first-team All-Pro 5 times and selected for the Pro Bowl 8 times. Despite shoulder injuries that limited him in college, Wood never missed a game in his 12-year NFL career, all with the Packers, who won 5 titles during his time in Green Bay. He ranked second in team history with 48 career interceptions. Only Bobby Dillon, recently selected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame as part of its centennial class, has more at 52. Lombardi once said, pound for pound, Willie was the best tackler in the game. Wood was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1989. The game's lost a true legend with the passing of Willie Wood, Hall of Fame President and CEO David Baker said. He had an unbelievable football career which helped transform Green Bay, Wisconsin into Titletown, USA. Willie was a rare player who always fought to be a great teammate and achieve success. He is regarded as one of D.C.'s greatest high school athletes after starring at Armstrong High. A city street in D.C. is named Willie Wood Way. Well, we're going to move on now to the first of two Irish subjects, Jack Burns, who died recently at the age of 86. Jack Burns was a comedian, and he was part of two great stand-up comedy duos. The first didn't last very long, but it was the guy who would go on to his own greatness, George Carlin. The two were disc jockeys, and when they were in Los Angeles, they got together, did a lot of stand-up gigs, and put together a memorable album for the Playboy Club that was done in 1960 but released in 1963. And you get an idea of the subversiveness of George Carlin in this routine with Jack and George satirizing children's television.
There's another type of television show that comes on your screen every afternoon. It's directed primarily toward the children, and they call them, of course, kiddie shows. People come out with, insipid sayings and funny hats. We'd like to give you our version of a children's show for hip kiddies, and we call it Captain Jack and Jolly George.
Hi, kids, it's time for Captain Jack, that's me. And Jolly George, that's me. Hey, what a show we got for you today. Oh, boy, we always have a good show for you, don't we, kids? Not like watching that square old Miss Dingling or anything like that, huh? Hey, kids, remember yesterday on Cartoon Time, we left Clarabelle the Clown and Hermie the Hermaphrodite before Clarabelle's mommy came in. Yeah. Hey, now how about you kids out there? You managed to get the booze hidden before Mommy staggers home? Oh, let's watch that now. Mommy don't want to see you getting smashed, too. I'll tell you what you do, kids. You watch and see where Daddy hides his booze, and then you put yours in the same place. And then if she finds it, he gets busted, not you. See?
Yeah, it's so much fun seeing Daddy get all hung up like that.
Yeah.
Hey, kids, Today is absolutely the last day to send for your Captain Jack and Jolly George Jr. Junkie Kit. You've got to have this kit. Oh, boy. You've got to have it.
And why is this the last day? I'll tell you why, kids. We were down at Tijuana, and our dealer has been busted by the fuzz.
Yeah.
So we're running just a little short of the stuff, kids, I'll tell you.
Now, of course, this is pure heroin you get. I mean pure heroin. No milk, sugar, no preservative, no flour added. It is dynamite.
I'll tell you, kid. Captain Jack and I shared a half a bag, shot it up just before the show. I'll tell you, I'm twisted, kids. Look at my eyes, huh? One taste, kids, and I'm stoned.
Now, of course, in the kit, you also get a U.S. Army surplus 12cc hypodermic needle.
That's right. And you get a genuine Roger Silverware 1812 bent spoon. Yeah, that's to mix the fix, kids. And that spoon, hey, he knows, huh? Sure thing. And I'll tell you what, kids, that spoon is available in modern, traditional, provincial, or rose-made. Make sure you specify which pattern you want when you send in, kids.
And, of course, you get 3,669 feet of rubber tubing to wrap around your arm, get that vein popping out there. That's big out there.
Joking about kids using heroin was pretty counterculture back then. Ironically, Jack Burns wrote most of their material. They parted on friendly terms. Carlin obviously became even more subversive as time went on, and Jack Burns became more mainstream. He developed a second partnership that was more successful and longer lasting with a nice Jewish boy, Avery Schreiber. Here's a little bit of their most famous routine, Jack Burns hailing a cab in New York City with Avery Schreiber as the taxi driver. And they were famous for that, huh, yeah, back and forth.
Cab, taxi, cab, taxi, cab. Where to? Oh, I don't know, just head downtown there, what you call your Times Square there. I just love to drive around New York. I love New York. I love New York in June. How about you? I love the Gershwin tune. How about you? Hey. East side, west side, all around the town. Hey. Give my regards to Broadway. Hey. Remember me to Herald Square. Hey.
No singing in the cab. You see the sign there? No singing in the cab. Didn't I have you in this cab a couple of weeks ago?
Oh, yeah, sure. You're the same guy. Sure. Yeah, I recognize your haircut there.
Yeah, you were in town at a convention.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, it's obvious.
Yeah, the whole gang's here. Hail, the gang's. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. I'll tell you who's here. Jimmy.
Don't tell me who's here. Don't tell me who's here.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're all here. Everybody except Paulie Noonan.
Paulie ain't here?
Paulie ain't here, no. He had to go back to Boston, see? His great aunt passed on. Annie Noonan's gone. Annie left us. Annie's gone. Tell you one thing, though. She was crazy about Paulie. Oh, she treated him like he was his own son, you know. She was crazy about Paulie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, crazy. Crazy Annie.
Yeah. Of course, he felt the same way about her, but he could never be around her too much, him always being on the road and everything.
Well, there you are. You see, maybe if he spent a little more time with her, she'd be alive today.
I doubt that. She was hit by a truck.
After those two broke up, he did a lot of gigs. His most famous one was also a short-lived one. When Don Knotts left the Andy Griffith Show, they tried to make him a deputy in the mold of Barney Fife, but Don Knotts was basically irreplaceable, and Jack Burns left the show after about a half a season. He went on to do another duo, but this was voice only, with Lorenzo Music, a.k.a. Carlton the Doorman, and they were crash test dummies in some well-known public service television commercials for seatbelts, and he used his considerable writing talents to write for the Muppets and for Hee Haw. Definitely an opposite career arc from his first comedy duo partner, George Carlin. Well, we're going to move on to our other Irish subject tonight, Mary Higgins Clark, who died recently at the age of 92. Mary Higgins Clark was one of the most successful novelists of the 20th century. In America, female or male, she sold over 100 million copies of her mystery and suspense novels. Starting in the late 1960s, she wrote over 50 novels, and virtually all of them were bestsellers. And I have to tell you, that's a pretty formidable record. Here's a brief news report on the death of Mary Higgins Clark.
One of the world's most popular authors, known as the Queen of Suspense, is dead tonight. Mary Higgins Clark, a Bronx native, died today in Florida. She was 92. Publisher Simon & Schuster making the announcement tonight. She died of natural causes, surrounded, they say, by family and friends. Higgins Clark lived in New Jersey for more than 20 years. She raised her kids there. Every one of her 56 books was a bestseller. And there are more than 100 million copies of her books in print in the United States. She will be missed.
She started out writing radio scripts and short stories. Her husband died young and left 5 children for her to support. The radio market dried up. The short story market wasn't too lucrative, so she decided to start writing novels. Her first novel was a fictionalized account of the life of George Washington. It didn't go anywhere, and at that point she went into suspense and mystery. Here is National Public Radio with a little more on her career.
Mary Higgins Clark, the Queen of Suspense, has died at the age of 92. The best-selling author was a widow in her 40s with 5 children to support when her first book was published. She would go on to write more than 50 books. When NPR's Lynn Neary sat down with her just over 2 years ago, the author said no matter how long she had left, she planned to spend it doing the only thing she was good at.
I say if the fairy godmothers come to the cradle, the one who might have left me a singing voice was out of town. I can't sew anything. Well, I fed 5 kids, but I'm no gourmet cook.
So you can't imagine a time, I would think, where you're not actually writing a novel or writing one.
Honestly not. Just turned in the April one, so I don't have to write at the moment. And I'm thinking, what'll I do?
Remembering Mary Higgins Clark, her last novel, Kiss the Girls and Make Them Cry, came out last fall.
The protagonists of her bestsellers were often women who found themselves sucked into tense, nightmarish situations. In All Around the Town, a 21-year-old student is accused of murdering her English professor. In A Cry in the Night, a pregnant woman unravels her husband's dark past. And in The Cradle Will Fall, a county prosecutor observes a possible crime from her hospital window. Explaining her approach to the New York Times in 1997, Miss Clark said that she wrote about nice people whose lives have been invaded. Unlike a lot of writers of the same genre, to her credit, she didn't use a lot of sex, and there wasn't a lot of graphic violence in her novels. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps, and we're going to close tonight with a brief mention of Peter Serkin, who died recently at the age of 72, one of the great concert pianists of our era. Peter Serkin was the son of Rudolf Serkin, one of the great pianists of the 20th century. I met Rudolf Serkin a number of times when I was a little boy. My music teacher took me backstage at Orchestra Hall to shake his hand after a performance. His son Peter was a high-level concert pianist in his teens, and then he dropped out for a while, but ultimately he came back. Peter Serkin was a gentleman like his father, I remember that. And as a final tribute to Peter Serkin, here he is playing with his father when his father was in his early 80s. They're playing a Schubert march for 4 hands.